Thank you for joining us, and welcome. We're here to talk about Orafce, and I have here with me our developer advocate, Frits. Frits, do you want to introduce yourself real quickly, and then we can get this underway?
Yeah, I'm Frits Hoogland. I'm Dutch, as you can hear from my last name. I'm in the Dutch in the European time zone, and I am a long-time Oracle user, and now for a little more than a year, I'm with Yugabyte and looking at and investigating the distributed database Yugabyte, which I think with cloud coming from an Oracle perspective is truly a next step in how databases should be deployed in a modern application environment and having the ability to survive an availability zone outage. And this is actually one of the things, and that is also one of the main reasons for me to join Yugabyte, is what I've seen with Oracle, despite all the high availability features, which is something that is really, really painful. But that is what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Fritz. Yeah, and like we have a few of the folks from the Oracle, who are Oracle veterans, right? Like from the Oak Table and that type of groups. Like there's Bryn, Frank, Fritz, all of these folks, and the rest of us, we learn a lot from them with respect to what Oracle has done from the feature set perspective and comparing it with Postgres and so on, right? And so this is an interesting talk even from that perspective, because Orafce has something to do with, if you're going from Oracle to Postgres, how does it make it easier and so on, right? But I think Fritz has 0 slides, so it's just a command prompt. So it's truly, from an engineer to other engineers. So, but okay, so let's maybe get started, Fritz. Let's start with what is Orafce and and why would anybody need it?
Well, Orafce is a Postgres extension, and because we are reusing the Postgres layer, especially the upper layer, as I like to call it, so the SQL specifications and processing SQL. It is an extension with Postgres, and therefore we use this extension too. And because the extension is used for essentially adding functions, Oracle-based functions, to Postgres, it is easy for us, and therefore we have added it. And I think, I cannot find it anywhere, but I also think that Orafce is actually an abbreviation of Oracle Functions Extension.
First off, is it Orafce? Is it Orafce? Does anybody know how to say it? It's like SQL. Is it SQL or is it SQL?
I say Orafce.
Okay, we'll stick with that. So okay, Orafce. Keep going. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. I think if you had other things, finish your thought.
And in that sense, you should view it as a relatively simple extension that doesn't really do anything with storage, etc. It is really just a set of functions which is added to Postgres, and therefore we have added it to Yugabyte in order to relieve some of the things which you might encounter during porting Oracle applications to Postgres. That is the function of it, and it doesn't do the porting or the migration or anything like that for you. All it does is it provides you a set of functions which you recognize from Oracle in order to have that functionality in Postgres, and therefore in Yugabyte, just to ease it from that perspective. That is the functionality that it provides.
Fantastic. Okay, so maybe let's look at some real examples, and then we'll come back to where we would use these examples, how it would help somebody, and so on, right? So I think at a high level, I think everyone's getting a view of what it is. So do you want to jump in and show us some of the stuff that it does?
Yeah. If correctly, everybody can see my screen. So the environment. And I start YSQL SH, which is the Yugabyte PSQL equivalent. And you can verify whether the Orafce extension is enabled using \dx for extension. And at this point, I don't have the Orafce extension installed. If I do install it, it's automatically installed on all of the YSQL nodes in a Yugabyte cluster. That is one important thing. One of the things
automatically installed, meaning the extension exists on all nodes prepackaged, and you're just going to enable it or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what create the command in Postgres and in YSQL is create extension. What create extension does is it binds the catalog to already available functionality. So if you have an extension in Postgres and do not have it installed, you cannot use create extension because it needs to be there in order to hook it up with the catalog. And that's what create extension does. From the perspective, one of the things which you see in Oracle, which you see a lot, is a select from dual. Oracle does not allow to use a select statement without a from clause. It needs to have a from clause. So if in Postgres, for example, what you can do is you can get a current timestamp in this way. And in Oracle, the equivalent would be this, but this arrows out. But if you move over code from Oracle, you will have to change things. That is inevitable, and that is going from one database to another, which it always will cause. But if there are some things which you can ease up, and that easing of this migration is what Orafce does. So like you said, Karthik, it's already installed, available by default, and all you need to do is you need to say create extension Orafce, and if you execute this command, it creates the catalog data. So it binds the catalog to the available functionality. So, and one of these functionalities is a from dual implementation. So now I can say, and this is
actually,
really...
before we do that, could you run the /dx again just to see if it's loaded?
Yep.
Okay,
So now,
first line there. Yeah, makes sense.
Now it's there.
Awesome.
Yep. So now if you say select current timestamp from dual, it will give you the timestamp. It's
fantastic. Okay, so I think just to interpret what this means to the end user, it means that, like, yes, you have to convert your tables, your DDL from Oracle to Postgres, but the actual queries that you run, like, you would have had to go and delete this for dual and do some stuff. And in this case, you can simply run the application, which is semantically equivalent. There may be other places where you might have to change stuff, but it just minimizes the number of changes you have to make. Is that a fair way to explain that?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and by the way, a side note, right? I have seen this dual a lot. What does dual mean in Oracle? Does anybody know? Is it just like one of those things that's been around forever?
I think also for me, it's kind of a given. It was there when I started.
It's always there. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And I might want to look it up, but it's the thing I do know is that, and actually when discussing this with Frank, he asked me to see if I could insert an extra X, because also what you see in Oracle, if you do a select star from dual, you will see dummy and an X. And one of the things in which you can seriously distort an Oracle database is if you insert another row into the dual table, because then you get two results if you select from dual, and then the whole Oracle database comes to a standstill. This stopped being an issue when Oracle implemented what I called the fast path dual, because it used to do a regular SQL parsing, etc., which made it really heavyweight. And later on, Oracle created a special fast path for dual to speed things up, because anything which you require from the database, like a date or anything else, requires you to select it from dual. There is no way around that.
I didn't realize you could insert into dual also. I thought it was just like an abstract entity, but it looks like it's actually a physical entity in Oracle. You can actually do stuff with, or you could do stuff with it.
Now, this is a view, and the view is created in such a way in Postgres and in YSQL that you cannot insert anything into it. So it looks like a table, but it isn't.
It's not. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Another thing which regularly happens is if you use PL SQL and PL PGSQL, you in Postgres, you could see something. Oh, that's the wrong. You could see something like this, that you raise a notice during executing procedural SQL.
Mm-hmm.
It says notice hello. And in Oracle, the equivalent for doing this is DBMS output. For DBMS output, you need to do a little of extra work. And this is how it looks like. And this is not 100% Oracle SQL, as far as I know, Oracle PL SQL, as I know, because the server output T is normally not done. But this creates the very same output in this sense, and it omits the notice. If you say raise notice, then you raise it on with notice severity, and it will say that. So it is a little friendly is maybe not a great word, but it does it 100% like Oracle would do it in that sense. And this allows you to create text-based reports and these kind of things.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Awesome. Okay. That was, yeah, I think that's pretty nifty.
Yeah, it's all kind of marginal, but if you're truly porting something from an Oracle database, these things could mean a lot.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense, because if you have a program full of this, just a one-to-one transformation from whatever the stuff below is to the stuff above, it's like a lot of work. So, and parsing the output and stripping out the notice. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing, and this thing is kind of puts me in a situation that I say, for a cluster database like we have, this is not the way I would like to use it, but still this feature is available, and that is the following. If I create a text file which simply contains some silly data for the sake of showing it, so AABBCCDD, and then I go into MySQL again. I have to insert the path /tmp into UTL file there. And UTL file is a package in Oracle which allows you to read and write from a file. And this brings the discussion saying, if you have a cluster database and you want to be dynamic and you don't want to be dependent on a single node, it doesn't really make sense to do something which essentially exists on a single node. I'm not sure if there is this this functionality, because how you typically want to do this is using an S3 bucket. So it's a high available location and you can reach it from any node. But this is a file on a single node, which is sitting on that node. So you have to use it with care. And again, if you're porting an application as an intermediary step between in being an Oracle application, moving to a MySQL application, this might just be a step in between, because I believe that most of this functionality, despite the fact that it might be handy, should eventually be moved to full Postgres and MySQL functionality, so you can take advantage of progress which is made there and not rely on functionality which is added simply for the sake of migrating onto it, right? It's kind of logical, but it's important to realize this, because otherwise projects could get stuck on this functionality, and then if it is essentially too late, come to the conclusion that they stuck with something that is not really flexible and does not grow along with the new functionality in Postgres and MySQL. Now, I've inserted a path into UTL file there, and that allows me to use /tmp as a file location. Now, using the following procedural SQL, what I can do is I declare a UTL file object, file type, and I can open the file and read it. In the same sense, this allows you to also write to this file. And like I said, I don't see this a lot. And actually, when discussing this with Frank, we came to the conclusion that you can sort of mimic this functionality using the copy command. using the copy command, you can also reach the file system. But that is, the copy command is meant for copying file data in and out. For your copying data for inserting of copying it out of a table, and not so much for example, creating a report. Because what I also seen in my past quite a lot is that this functionality is extensively used to generate reports or get data from tables, or especially at the end of the day, week, etc., and generate data files for sending over, for example, to banks. You know, the famous paying tapes and these kind of things. Not sure if that, probably nowadays, that's not that extensively done anymore, but in the past you have had to create these files and then send them to a bank to get to do a mass payment to a lot of people or a lot of persons, etc. And this is how that functionality was done in an Oracle database. And this is how you can now still do it in this way, because what I did here was reading, but you can also set it to write, and then you can generate a report. So you don't write a file, you don't write a CSV type of file. You can really create a text-based report in this way.
Yeah, using the previous DBMS output and this one especially, right? Like in combination.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep going. What else do you have?
Yeah. Well, then what else, which is not that that sexy to show, is there is a lot of date functionality which allows you to select dates. There is even a special PLV date package, which I didn't even know, but it is a collection of packages which is created and I think still owned by Quest software, which has functionality like deciding what is a business date and then saying I want to get the next business date in 3 days. So you don't get a weekend selected, and that kind of functionality. So there's a lot of that stuff in there. And like I said, sadly, this is not something really exciting like showing geographic speed ups and partitioning and these kind of things. This is way more down to earth and simple. Although if you need this might be truly a time saver and help you just use that functionality in this database if you move over from Oracle, you know.
Or more importantly, like not have to go and edit your code and thousands of lines of code to figure out and fix it and get it to run, right? Like that's the other.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I found, and now there are 2 additional packages which are there simply because they are part of Orafce, which and these packages are DBMS Alert and DBMS Pipe. And DBMS Alert allows you to send a message to 1 or more sessions, and DBMS Pipe allows you to transfer data between sessions. That functionality is there and it will work in your local database, but we are a distributed database, and because that functionality uses shared memory, it cannot work between YSQL nodes. So I would strongly advise to not use that functionality because it doesn't make sense to use it in YSQL.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. But what about like, for example, other basic things? I'm sure Oracle types are different, right? Like the data types and so on. So what about that? Any, like, because that's more the DDL side a little bit, right? Like any help on that side or?
Yeah. Yeah, the last part that I had written down was it provides the Oracle, the famous Oracle varchar2 type. Postgres uses varchar for variable sized records, and Oracle had implemented that too. And then ever since I used Oracle, starting from Oracle 7, there was always the varchar2 type which was used. And
what's the difference? I'm curious now that you mentioned it. What is the difference between varchar 1 or just varchar?
Generally don't know, because I haven't seen the use of varchar ever in Oracle. It's always varchar2. So I don't know. And supposedly it's an improvement, you know, because it has the 2 instead of none.
Right. So version 2.0 makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. Awesome. Fantastic.
And so what Orafce provides is FARCAR2, which is, as far as I know, simply an implementation to allow the field type to be FARCAR2 and nothing else. There is also NFARCAR2, which contains the national language settings for the data. And there is FARCAR2, simply also just to have a FARCAR implementation, which is called FARCAR2, to ease implementation. And lastly, as a data type, there is date. Oracle has the date type. That is the one date type that Oracle has for data, the traditional one, I should say. And this is also an implementation which allows you to use dates in the way you're used to Oracle. There are still some things which are described, which are quite detailed, which might behave slightly different, and I don't have examples of that, simply for the sake of getting a list and to show it. And like I said, if you're quickly porting an application and you do a proof of concept, this would help, but I would strongly advise to use native YSQL data types as soon as you're truly porting the application, because otherwise you'll be stuck with something that is non-standard and might not evolve along with the database if time when time passes. So it's really just to have the ability to quick and dirty put something down and see if it works. That is what it's for. One noticeable thing, and one thing I've actually quite extensively used, and I'm now nearing the end of what I found and what I think is interesting to tell about Orafce is if I try to generate random data, and I think generating random data and generating data is ideal being done in PL procedural SQL, because that cuts out a client which has to funnel in that data over a network. And by doing that natively in Postgres, it's not that easy to do, and you need to write a function to generate true random data.
You mean generate series, or it's just truly random data where the sequences, where it's not like a series, but it's like just random numbers?
Yeah, no, for generating series of numbers, there is generate series. But if you want to generate a random string of 30 random characters.
Okay, string. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sort of doable, and that is what you generally find if you look on the internet, is generate a UUID and cast it to a character. That is what is generally advised to do, but then you're stuck to such a thing. But you can copy, you can paste a few and then cut it out back to the original size of the random characters. But that is, and what I found is that that takes a lot of CPU power to actually do that. And if you create a custom function which uses dbm as random, using a number which then picks a character and sends back the character, that also truly kills performance. And there is a dbm as random package inside Orafce, which does it way more lightweight. And for generating random data, I don't need a number which is guaranteed to be a unique number at all times. I just want random data. And
yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, you're fine, because it's not a UUID. Makes sense. Yeah, it's cheaper to generate that. Yeah.
And I found that is a great way of very quickly generating random data, and in that way, which is way faster than it does when using the random function, which is native Postgres and MySQL functionality. So that is kind of a hidden treasure. Which
makes sense. Do you have the command handy to show a demo? If not, it's okay. But I was just curious, like dbms random, how it works. I'm just curious.
It's actually really simple. This is how it looks like. It's really saying dbms random string and then a for alphanumeric character, and then the number of characters you want. This is all. It's
and suppose I want to do say 5 such strings of 50 characters each, right? Like, would I put this into a like a do block where I just put like a for loop and
Yep.
call this
Yep,
or whatever. Okay, got it.
that's it. You can call it as much as you like and as many times as you like, and it
Got it.
will.
Does this also like I don't know if it's possible to use this inside generate series? Probably not, right? Generate series expects a integer type return, right? Like
Generate series requires to generate series, so it cannot use a
number. Yeah, you can use this.
do it.
Yeah, makes sense. But this is nifty. Yeah, and quite interesting to see. Yeah.
Well, what you can do is use generate series, because I'm not saying that generate series is not handy. That is also ultimately handy, but you can use that and then use dbms random string and use it for the other fields. So you can use you can use the random series, the generate series command, to fill out the ID, the primary key of the fields, and then use dbms random to fill the text fields or varchar fields, whatever you're using for the data, and generate random data. It's
awesome. All right.
so
yeah. So maybe let me ask a couple of non-exact questions, right? Like I'm sure like users are thinking about this. So first question is, what Orafce functionality does YugabyteDB not support? Like you pointed out some things that are not sensible to use. I mean, that's more like the fact that this is a distributed database and what does it mean if you just operate on one node, right? Totally fair. But what is some functionality that it doesn't support, or is there anything which is just like because it's an extension, everything just works?
As far as I could see and detect upon some simple testing and going over the different packages, because a lot have to do dealing with data in the SQL layer, everything that is inside Orafce is actually supported. There is no reason that it shouldn't work. It's a lot of calculations with data and excluding weekends and these kind of things. So which is just simply doing mathematics with dates. And like I said, there are some things which dive a little deeper, which are dbms alert, dbms pipe, for example. And these use shared memory. The shared memory is still there. We don't use it because we don't cache data in YSQL. We cache data in the T server. But still, the shared memory segment is there, and it can use it to get data across between sessions in the same YSQL instance. But like I said, because you want to be independent from a specific node, you shouldn't use it.
Makes sense. And maybe a higher level question, which is like, this actually simplifies moving an Oracle application to, Postgres or YugabyteDB database. What about the limitations of Orafce itself? Or like put another way, like, is there like any broad idea on like, is there a percentage of very simple and commonly used functions that Orafce covers? Any idea on what it does and doesn't do as a package itself? It's a vague question. It's a highly vague question. But
we took the package. We took Orafce because it comes with Postgres. I've looked up the source code location, so the base location. What I'm not happy about is that it speaks that it's compatible with Oracle 10. That is more than 10 years ago. So it kind of looks like it's a bit outdated and just providing functionality as is. And it's not kept up to date and moved along with all current Oracle functions. So it's really just some quite specific things, like I said, data arithmetic, UTL file, dbms output, dbms random, these kind of things. It's really specific. If you think, well, I hope that this other package which I use in Oracle, which nobody else uses, is in Orafce, well, I can almost certainly guarantee that it's not. It's really these specifics which are there.
Very common ones, Scott.
Yep.
Awesome. Fantastic. I think, let me see. I don't think I have too many other questions. Anything else you had that you wanted to mention about Orafce?
No. I think the most important one is when looking at it, thinking about it, is it should be an intermediary step in porting your application and allowing you to do some quick prototyping and testing. That is really important. It cannot be
switch native.
Yeah. Not a final solution.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Frits. Really appreciate all the insight, and like it was really, really great session. Lot of interesting stuff. I learned a whole bunch of stuff. And thank you folks for joining us. Hope this was informative. Feel free to drop questions at the LinkedIn comment itself, or you can join our community Slack, yugabyte.com/Slack. I think Alexa just posted on the comments the actual link, which is the one that will get you in there. And feel free to holler at us there. Frits will be around to answer your questions there as well.
Yep.
And yeah, see you folks next week, same time. A bunch of other exciting topics.
Okay. Cheers.